Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going over 5 players that I believe are going to break out in the 2024 season that you guys are going to want to draft in fantasy football this summer. But before we get on into these 5 breakout players that you must draft in 2024 fantasy football, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into 5 breakout players that you must draft in 2024 fantasy football. We begin with the first breakout player that you must draft, and that is Bijan Robinson, running back of the Atlanta Falcons, current underdog ADP running back 2 at pick 6.9 as of right now. While Christian McCaffrey is the solidified running back 1 in fantasy football drafts, there is definitely a debate between Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson as the running back number 2, and that is a debate that I have in my head every single day. And if we're being completely honest, they are going to flip-flop in my rankings a million different times before we get to fantasy football draft season in late August, early September. I love both of them, but I want to talk about Bijan Robinson today. Recently, Raheem Morris, the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, Bijan Robinson also said the same thing. And what they both said was that the team is going to look to utilize Bijan Robinson in the Christian McCaffrey role, looking to give this guy roughly a gazillion touches game in and game out. And if that is the case, which I believe will be the case even without Morris or Bijan Robinson going out and saying it, I thought that they were going to really look to feed Bijan Robinson this season, and I think that is going to be the case. Last year, Bijan Robinson ended up being a bust for fantasy football, not because he went out there and did not live up to our expectations. He's out there playing like he has 50 pounds strapped to each leg and he's running in molasses, right? That's not what happened. The reason why Bijan Robinson failed was because his usage was incredibly low. You would think that when you draft a running back as highly as the Atlanta Falcons drafted Bijan Robinson, that they would give him an insane workload, and that just wasn't the case. He finished as the running back 9 in PPR and the running back 16 in PPR points per game, tied with Derrick Henry. 17 games played with 16 starts for Bijan, 214 carries, 12.6 per game, 19th at running back, 12.6 per game. That is laughable for a running back with the skill set of Bijan Robinson. Again, for a running back that they ran to the podium to select in the 2023 NFL draft. He had 976 rushing yards, 57.4 per game, 15th, 86 targets, 5.1 per game, 3rd, 58 receptions, 3.4 per game, 6th, 487 receiving yards, 28.6 per game, number 4, and 8 total touchdowns, 20th. In terms of efficiency, he ranked 9th in yards per touch, 5th in yards created, 16th in dominator rating, and 16th in true yards per carry. With Arthur Smith now gone to terrorize the Pittsburgh Steelers, Bijan Robinson is in the driver's seat. He is in the perfect situation to succeed under Raheem Morris. The addition of Kirk Cousins as their starting quarterback is going to mean that this is a team that won't have to throw the ball a lot late in the game. This is going to be a team that is going to be able to control worse teams, worse opponents, and be able to have a positive game script for Bijan Robinson. I genuinely believe that Bijan Robinson could be the number 1 overall pick in fantasy football drafts come 2025. I believe Bijan Robinson is amazing, and he was basically just thrown into the cuck chair by Arthur Smith last season with the correct usage. Bijan Robinson is going to dominate 50 Shades of Grey style, and I believe that you need to be targeting him in the middle of the first round of 2024 fantasy football drafts. At number 2, we got Trey McBride, tight end of the Arizona Cardinals, underdog ADP, tight end 3 at pick 46.3. Now, no longer Do you need to pay a first, a second, or even a third round pick to get a top 3 tight end in fantasy football? Trey McBride, if this was, I would say, just last year, he's probably going potentially at the beginning of the 3rd round, but a lot of the time you can find Trey McBride in the 4th round, and if your league is kind of fading away from the tight end position, you might be able to get him even later. Trey McBride last year had an incredible season. When we entered into last year, not many people were banging their chest like King Kong on top of the Eiffel Tower, telling you guys that you need to draft Trey McBride, but he ended up having a solid season. Tight end 7 in PPR and tight end 8 in PPR points per game, playing in 17 games with 12 starts, and not all of those starts were even with Kyler Murray. 106 targets, 6.2 per game, number 6 at tight end. 81 receptions, 4.8 per game, number 5. 825 receiving yards, 48.5 per game, number 7. And 3 total touchdowns, 18th at tight end. Now, we talk a lot on this channel, and every fantasy analyst will tell you the exact same thing, and that is that the touchdown number is incredibly volatile year in and year out. A guy like Trey McBride, who has the upside to score 10 touchdowns this season, maybe even more, right? If the Arizona Cardinals offense pops off, they go ballistic, they go nuclear. Kyler Murray has this huge year. Marvin Harrison really helps them out. Trey McBride scores 10 touchdowns. I think that's possible, but that is not a guarantee. We see even some of the best players at tight end, wide receiver be very up and down in terms of the touchdown number. But since he scored only 3 last season and finished as the tight end 8 in PPR points per game, and since I suspect that the Arizona Cardinals offense is going to get better, and since I suspect that Trey McBride himself is going to get better, this feels like a situation where you are getting the tight end 3 off the board at pick 46.3, who has crystal clear upside of being the tight end number 1. 5th in target separation, 5th in fantasy points per out run, 6th in yards per team pass attempt, and 3rd in true catch rate. There is no competition in the tight end room for Trey McBride. And outside of Maserati Marvin Harrison Jr., it's not like the Arizona Cardinals are the Miami Dolphins, where they have Tyreek Hill, they have Jalen Waddle, they have Odell Beckham Jr., right? Where they just have a myriad of weapons at their disposal. The Arizona Cardinals have a Maserati in Marvin Harrison, they've got a Ferrari in Trey McBride, and then they've got a bunch of Honda Civics. Now, I own a Honda Civic, I drive a Honda Civic. But what I will tell you is that once you get into the Michael Wilson, the other range of players on this team that are catching passes, they simply just aren't all that great. Sure, they're fine. They'll be reliable enough, but they can't even hold the jock strap of a guy like Trey McBride. So I think Marvin Harrison is going to take this offense to the next level. I think Marvin Harrison is going to be able to take this offense into overdrive with Kyler Murray being healthy to enter the season. I think that Trey McBride could be sitting atop the tight end rankings at the end of the year. I think he could easily be the tight end number 1. I have him in the same tier as Sam Laporta and Mr. Swift, Travis Kelce. So I really do see the upside out of Trey McBride. I loved what I saw out of McBride last season, and I believe he has the pedigree, the skill, and he is on the team that could get him the crazy amount of targets that could potentially lead to a tight end number 1 season. At number 3, we got James Let Him Cook of the Buffalo Bills. Underdog ADP running back 13 at pick 58.4. I fully understand that Underdog Fantasy is a very wide receiver heavy platform early on, so the likelihood that you got James Cook at pick 58.4 in your redraft league is pretty low. His ADP will definitely be higher in those redraft leagues. Even though redraft leagues are shifting more towards being wide receiver heavy, we all know you're not getting the running back 13 at pick 58.4 in your league with Janice from fucking accounting. So running back 12 last year in PPR, running back 19 in PPR points per game. And while James Cook did put up 1,000 rushing yards last season, he was severely held back by the touchdown total, only scoring 6 total touchdowns last year, 24th at running back. And I think to categorize James Cook as a true breakout running back, he probably would have had to get over 1,200 rushing yards, and he probably would have had to score more than 6 touchdowns. He was the running back 12 last year and the running back 19 in PPR points per game. He played in 17 games with 13 starts. He ranked 10th in carries with 237 carries, 13.9 per game, 1,122 rushing yards, 66 per game, number 4, 54 receptions, 3.2 per game, 19th, 44 receptions, 2.6 per game, 17th, 455 receiving yards, 26.2 per game, 8th, and again, only 6 total touchdowns, 24th at running back, despite averaging the 12th most true yards per carry, the 5th most yards per touch, and being an efficient running back as a whole, giving him an expected points added of 3rd at running back. He wasn't able to have that monstrous league-winning year. He wasn't able to take your team over the top. He wasn't able to hit your opponents with a right hand from Floyd Mayweather, a right hand from Mike Tyson, right? That left upper hook, the left hook from Alex Pereira, right? He wasn't able to do that. And that is because of the touchdowns. The competition in the running back room is incredibly light in Buffalo. And I think James Cook easily is better than every single running back on this team. I understand the reason why James Cook, in a way, gets screwed out of scoring touchdowns is because of how big of a man Josh Allen is. It is very easy to sneak him into the end zone, even 5 yards out. Unless you get 2 guys on Josh Allen, he might be able to just fucking hit stick you into Narnia. He might be able to just shake you off or even jump over you like he did to that poor Vikings defender a couple of years ago. So while that does somewhat hurt the upside of James Cook, I just don't see the touchdowns going this way again. I would be shocked if the Buffalo Bills had James Cook only get 6 total touchdowns this year. I think 10 is a lot more likely to occur than 6. And they lost Stephon Diggs to the Houston Texans, who was a solid red zone weapon. Sure, they still have Dalton Kincaid, and they bring in Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman. They have Khalil Shakira, but none of those guys, besides Dalton Kincaid, are really these huge red zone weapons like Calvin Johnson or something. So I think James Cook is going to be afforded a lot more opportunities this season to find the end zone. I think that James Cook is going to be able to have that huge season in 2024. While I think the Buffalo Bills might not be as good of a team in 2024 as they were in 2023 and in the past, I don't think that would necessarily be the Achilles heel of James Cook having a solid campaign this year. At number 4, we got Zack Moss, running back of the Cincinnati Bengals, underdog ADP, running back 26, pick 91.7. Now, Zack Moss still not being ranked as a top 24 back in ADP, to me, feels a little bit puzzling, as since I released my running back rankings video a couple weeks ago, I started to get a little higher on Zack Moss. Now, Zack Moss was a former Buffalo Bill, a former Indianapolis Colt, and prior to last season, Zack Moss was a guy that I had targeted as the lead back on Buffalo, but things never really went his way, right? There was a lot of potential there. You would see the sparks, the flashes. He was shining bright like a diamond every once in a while, but it never really played out for him until last year, right? When it came out that he would kind of be the guy when Jonathan Taylor was not there for the Colts. It almost felt like fool's gold, right? We've seen it before, and it never really happened, which is very similar to Devin Singletary, who is now on the Giants, used to play on the Bills, and then he was afforded the opportunity to be the lead back in Houston with Dameon Pierce essentially just sucking absolute donkey cock for fantasy, just could not run worth shit. And I'm thinking, like, Singletary, that guy was trash in Buffalo. Another guy that I kind of fell for in the past. I put my hand in the fucking bear trap, and I leave with one finger left, right? And it's the thumb, and that thumb was going down, right? It was a thumbs down for Zach Moss, a thumbs down for Singletary, and both of those guys found success in different places. Now, I am not going to sit here and pretend that the Cincinnati Bengals are the perfect destination for a running back, but we have seen a worse version of Joe Mixon be successful on this very team over the last couple of years. Zach Moss last season in 6 games in which he played above 50% of the snaps. So in the 6 games where he played over 50% of snaps last year for the Colts, he averaged 20.2 carries per game, 87 rushing yards per game, 4.3 yards per carry, 0.5 touchdowns, averaging 16.4 PPR points per game. And if you extrapolate that for the whole season, he would have ranked 7th amongst running backs. Now, do I expect in Cincinnati for Zach Moss to get 20 plus carries every single game? No. If you expect that, you simply don't know ball. You simply don't understand how the Cincinnati Bengals want to play offense. And you also don't understand that the offense wants to involve Chase Brown. Again, back to Indianapolis, though. In 4 of 6 of those games, he received 3 or more targets and had multiple top 12 performances over that stretch. On the season as a whole, 14 games played, he had 183 carries, 794 rushing yards, 37 targets, 27 receptions, 192 receiving yards, and 7 total touchdowns. We mentioned Chase Brown, and I do definitely think Chase Brown is an interesting target in fantasy football drafts. But in a vacuum, right, when we have Zach Moss versus Chase Brown, I am going to lean with the guy that has showed me he can do it. Chase Brown has had those flashes, but he was never really consistent. And I believe personally that with Joe Mixon now in Houston, the team is going to lean on Zach Moss. Now, I don't believe, like I've been saying, that this is going to be a workhorse running back roll out of Zach Moss, where he's getting 18, 20 carries. Some game, maybe one game he gets 25 fucking carries, right? I don't really think that's going to happen. I don't think the team's crutch on the running back is going to be Zach Moss. But I do think Zach Moss will clearly be above Chase Brown on the hierarchy. And based upon what I saw last season, I feel confident enough in saying that at ADP, as the running back 26, I want to be taking the upside shots on Zach Moss, because he showed us last season that this is a guy that can finish as a top 5, top 8, top 12 running back in fantasy football, that he could be one of the guys that is a dark horse running back that you draft, and he is that Willy Wonka golden fucking ticket to where he is the reason why you potentially even win your league. Now, while I talked about how the Bengals aren't necessarily the best situation to be in as a running back, I think anyone that's watched football over the last couple of years would kind of know that they're not necessarily the most run-heavy team in the NFL, but they are a successful ran team. So when they run the ball, it's going to work. They're not going to run the ball a gazillion times a game, but in this scenario, on the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm going to buy into what I saw last year in Zach Moss. I'm not saying you should full fade Chase Brown. We've talked about how I like Chase Brown on this channel, but I definitely would, in a vacuum, lean with Zach Moss. And I think we should start targeting Zach Moss more in fantasy football drafts due to the upside that we saw was very prevalent last season. Before we get on into the last breakout player that you must draft in 2024 fantasy football, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at Underdog Fantasy. We've been talking about them throughout today's video. Now, Underdog Fantasy is giving you guys, if you're a first-time depositor, a special pick plus up to $250 if you're a first-time depositor using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description. We are going to be doing best ball drafts all summer long on Underdog Fantasy, live streamed on this channel, so you can get into drafts with me. Now, if you want to practice before those live streams and you are new to Underdog Fantasy, make sure you sign up using promo code Notorious to claim your special pick, plus up to $250 if you're a first-time depositor. There are plenty of contests on the website, and they will be dropping even more as the summer goes along. There's going to be contests with as low buy-ins as $3 with solid payouts, and then they have the main contest, Best Ball Mania, $25 to enter over $1 million to first place. If you guys like drafting fantasy football teams, make sure that you check out Underdog Fantasy, link in the video description. So player number 5, right? Number 1, we go Bijan. Number 2, Trey McBride. Number 3, James Cook. Number 4, Zack. I think those are all relatively tame picks. I think most people that are watching today's video will agree with those takes. They would think, Nick, while maybe I don't like James Cook as much, I could see how it could happen. Nick, while I definitely prefer Laporta and Kelsey over McBride, I can see why he might finish as the tight end number 1, the head honcho. I could see how Zack could be the lead back in Cincinnati and how that could pay dividends. But player number 5 is Jahan Dotson. He is the true shot in the dark. Zack definitely a late round upside fucking shot from the moon, right? But he goes much earlier than Jahan Dotson, who's currently coming off the board at pick 135.3, wide receiver of the left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders? Wide receiver 20 or 24, wide receiver 64, like the Nintendo on Underdog Fantasy. So last year, I was huge on Jahan Dotson. I was talking up Jahan Dotson. I was giving him the Gawk 9,000 special. And I really thought that it was going to be a big season out of him. And his ADP started to rise. So I wasn't the only fucking buffoon who fell for Jahan Dotson. But I'm ready to hop, skip, and jump right back onto the bandwagon, because I really do believe that with better coaching, with better quarterback play, and with Curtis Samuel now in Buffalo, that should be able to give Jahan Dotson the clear number 2 wide receiver role in this offense. And while I like Terry McLaurin, we have to be honest, Terry McLaurin hasn't really had that huge year we've all been begging on our knees for years. I think there is a chance, now it's not the biggest chance, right? It's not the most likely outcome, but there is a chance that Jahan Dotson could end up as the number 1 target on this team, with Riverboat Ron now doing whatever the fuck he does, chilling at home, playing Xbox or something, playing Madden, because he doesn't know how to run a team. But yeah, he's gone. Now they got a new quarterback in Jaden Daniels, and in an offense with Cliff Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator. I think Jahan Dotson could be a sneaky pick. And the best part about Jahan Dotson when you're drafting the wide receiver 64 is if it doesn't work after the first couple of weeks, you can drop him like it's hot, like the Snoop Dogg song, right? You can cut him and there is no regrets, because guess what? You drafted him with one of your last fucking picks and you could just pick up someone else, right? If magically Luke McCaffrey comes out there and is balling out of control, then you can cut Jahan Dotson, right? If Jaden Daniels looks like a 2-pack of ass, then you can get rid of Jahan Dotson. You're not stuck with him, right? If Bijan Robinson ends up being a complete and utter mess up, a complete and utter disaster, then you're going to have to wear that on your face all season long. If McBride ends up as a bust, you drafted him pretty early on, that would hurt. James Cook, same thing. But with Jahan Dotson, if he ends up being bad, no harm, no foul, right? And I'm just going to talk about the upside here. In his rookie year, there was a reason why we liked him last year. 61 targets, 35 receptions, 523 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns, right? Hey, maybe Sam Howell's better. Maybe the offense is able to take that next leap. Maybe Jahan Dotson gets a little bit better, and we can see getting 500 touchdowns. That'd be fucking crazy, right? 12 games played, 500 plus yards, 7 touchdowns. We could see how entering into last season, why you might have liked Jahan Dotson, why I like Jahan Dotson. Doesn't work, right? You roll the dice, and it ends up all wrong, right? You spin the roulette wheel, you've got $1 million on red, it doesn't even go black, it goes green. Even worse, right? You can kind of talk yourself into, oh, it went on to black. Oh, man, that was like 50-50, basically. Okay. Right? But then when it goes green, you feel like a complete and utter jerk-off, right? And that's what it felt like with Jahan Dotson. It felt like the roulette wheel went on to green, right? And it really did hurt because I thought that Jahan Dotson was going to take that leap, right? 83 targets, 49 receptions, 518 receiving yards, and just 4 total touchdowns. He almost scored double the amount of touchdowns in 2022 in his rookie year, playing in just 12 games. He played in all 17 games last year. From what I have seen on tape, I think Jahan Dotson has the skill to take it to the level of being a solid flex option, right? I'm not saying he's going to turn into this top 12 receiver. You don't need him to do that when he's the wide receiver 64, right? If he's a reliable top 32 guy this season, you looked like Albert Einstein in the back of drafts taking him. So Jahan Dotson, I think he has the skill. I think last year he was given kind of the short end of the stick, and I think if the Commanders' offense is able to get marginally better, then we could see Jahan Dotson make a huge splash this season. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying today's video, make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. Whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure to leave a like on today's video to help me out a ton. Let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think. Do you agree, disagree with these takes? And let me know a breakout player that you are going to be drafting in 2024 fantasy football. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. Love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great one. As always, good boy.